Hey everyone, welcome to this video. In the previous class we went over reference and planning, scene planning basically. In this video we're going to do scene layout, just making a rough idea or rough sketch in 3D of what our scene will be. So let's get right into this video. Firstly, let's do a couple of things. Let's make our, just like the previous video, let's make our window or viewport layout so it will be a little bit conducive for what we want to do. So basically we want to have our reference opened here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come all the way to this corner here, left click and drag. Then I'm going to come to editor type. Then I'm going to switch to image editor. Now in the previous video you should have all the resources I linked or I spoke about. So I'm basically going to use that for our reference. Let me just quickly navigate to it on my system. So what I ended up doing was screenshotting our our reference board, and we'll just use that from there so that we can have all our notes here. Our notes are even not the most visible, so I'm just going to take another screenshot of our reference board just to make sure we have everything we need moving forward. Just give me a second, I'm taking another image. So I also advise you do the same so that you can have all your notes on all the scribbling we did in our previous video. So like we said and like we mentioned in our previous video, this is basically what we're building off of, how the camera is positioned and how these structures are. So what we're going to simply do in this video is we're going to block this out from our camera's perspective. Now you might be a bit confused, but the reason why we want to do that is we always want to make sure our camera is the first thing our camera is the first thing we align, basically, because in 3D you have infinite space and you have infinite space to do anything, but you don't really have infinite time. So you have to manage your time properly. You have to focus on what can be seen, not what might be seen or what may be seen. Always focus on what will be seen, right? So first thing we're going to do is align our camera. You can see now we need an extra window because we can't keep pressing 0 on the numpad to come to our camera. So what I'm going to simply do is I'm going to hit my camera, and you can see that our camera is facing is already a bit edited, the rotation. So what I'm going to do is Alt R. Now Alt is hitting Alt and RS or I think G, right? Yeah, RS or G, right? R is for rotation, S is for scale, and G is for grab. and location. So what that does is when you hit Alt, is you're telling Blender to clear out the rotation. As you can see, the rotation was 63, 46, but when I hit Alt R, everything has been cleared. So that's what we're just telling Blender to do. We're going to go to our rotate gizmo. We don't even really need to do that, but I'm going to hit R, Y, 90. That is not really the direction I want. So I'm going to hit 7, put X. Okay, X, that's the direction I want it to be. Then R, and then 7, and then Z, sorry, and then 90. And yes, so our camera now is facing what do you call it, is facing the direction I want. Also, one more thing, and I'm going to link this also in the class files. We're going to need a scale reference. Now, I don't see people talk about this often, but a scale reference is very, very, very important. And a scale reference basically is a real sized person or a real sized thing that helps you keep scale in mind, that helps you keep the size of things in mind. I remember starting 3D, I always ask the question, oh, how am I always going to make sure that this is the actual scale of things? Because if you do not keep things on the actual scale of things, it's going to look weird. It's either going to look too big or it's going to look too small. So that being said, I have I already have my what do you call it, opened in another file. Just come here and copy, delete my cube, and then Ctrl V, and we have an so this scale is what an actual human being will look like in 3D for us, and we can use this as our focal point for now before we do our very interesting cube. Now, like I said, I don't want us to be going back and forth, so what we can end up doing is we can create another window. As you can see that our windows are becoming as you can see, our layout is becoming a little bit choked. Eventually, when you start making a lot of money from 3D, or if you don't have to make a lot of money from 3D, but I would advise getting a second monitor. I actually have a second monitor here, but I'm just going to share this monitor so that we can all be on the same page. So I'm just going to come to the top left of my intersection here, and then left, click, and then you see that we have another window, and maybe I'm going to reduce this a little bit. Now what we want this window to be is our camera, so that we can adjust this from the 3D viewport as opposed to here. I'm going to come to camera, and then I'm going to come to viewport. If you remember our passport options, we're just going to do that real quick, and then I'm going to adjust my camera basically to where my my main character is, or my focal point. So that's where I want our cube to be eventually. So I'm just going to use that as our I'm just going to Alt G this so that we clear out all the location information, and then I'm going to take my camera a little bit up, and then I'm going to left click and drag. Now the reference we're looking for is, I'm just going to do T on this tab so that this can be retracted, and as well, so that we're using the most space possible. So we want our camera to be like this, basically similar to this, and you can see that our camera is tilting a little bit up, just a little tiny little bit. So I'm going to first get the distance of our focal points to our camera. I'm also going to make sure that our subject is in the center. How I can do that is, if you remember, you come to composition guide and then center, and you can see, yes, he's in the center. So now I think this is good distance, maybe this feels like good distance, and then I'm going to rotate this a little bit up, something like this, just so we can see the ceiling. Also know this is not going to be the locked version of what your camera is. As we go, we're going to keep adjusting our camera. That happens 99.9% of the time, so just always remember that you're always going to have to do that. But yeah, now that we have our camera in a really rough estimation of where we want it to be, I'm going to Shift A, Mesh, plane, and I'm going to scale this plane so that this will be our ground, our floor. As you can see, that if we can keep scaling this until it gets to our camera, but that is a little bit too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it a little bit more until it fill out this part of the camera. I'm going to hit tab, and then I'm going to come to edge, select my edge, and then I'm going to come to move, and then I'm going to move my edge all the way so that it covers the camera. Now remember that we are blocking our scene, and basically we want to make a block out of what our scene is eventually going to look like. This is going to be edited, so do not really obsess about it that much, but just know that this will be edited eventually. So firstly, as you can see, let's start with this wall at the end of the hall. Let's just do Ctrl A, add a plane, RY 90 degrees. I'm going to left click and move it a little bit back. So let's just give a rough estimate between how far our subject is from the wall. I think somewhere here is fine, and then I'm going to scale all the way up. Also, so we can have a one-to-one depiction of what our reference is, we can come all the way to output and then change this to 1080 as well. If it's not really, this is not really squared, it feels like it's vertical. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the width to 920 and then the height to 1080. So that just flips it and makes it vertical, but that is too vertical. So what I'm just going to make this a 1080 by 1080, to be honest. That's the standard vertical. I wouldn't know what these people use, but what we can also do is we can navigate all the way to where our images are. Basically, if I should not find where that is, I'll just come to my drive, 2 minutes, cons files, and then I can come to properties and come to details and check what they use. So they use 736 by 1920. That feels like a lower resolution. 736 1920. So what we can do is, to get a higher version of this, we can just shift asterisk on our keyboard and then press 2. So that means is that what we're asking Blender to do is times what we have by 2, and you see that we will begin to have something closer to what a higher scaled version of this base composition size, basically. So you can see that we're having something one-to-one, and just gradually you see that a few things are beginning to look off. Let me come to this viewport and turn this off so that we can see our character for our character. You see that our character is a little bit too far compared to our subject or compared to our reference, so I'm just going to move him a little bit more, right? I feel like the floor is showing too much, so I'm going to come to the camera and then I'm going to rotate it a little bit high, maybe something like that. Or we can have a what do you call it, so that we're not just taking from this, we can have something similar to this as well. So I'm just going to leave it at where it is, where it was rather, and then I'm going to as opposed to this being next to the ground, I'm going to increase a little bit more. Yeah, basically what we can also do is we can come to our camera and then come to the focal length and then increase the focal length a little bit more, just a tiny bit more, maybe 57 or even 60. No, there's a 57 or 55. 55. And yes, we'll just keep messing with this until we find something we want. Now let's make this the beams on the side. These beams on the side. Let me see what it looks like here. To be honest, we could decide to make something like this as opposed to something like this. Let me see. My only concern with this is it might be a little bit too advanced. Making this exact shape might be a little bit too advanced, but like I said, we don't want to copy just one thing. We want to do our best to make something good. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to make this exactly, because I have a few things I would like to explain, a few modifiers I would like us to use. Firstly, let's make these pillars. Remember that we're always going to reference our camera. So I'm just going to choose Shift A, cube, and then I'm going to scale the cube, because we're trying to make this this huge block. So what we're going to do is just drag this to the side around here maybe, and then tab 3 to go to face select, left click on your face and then drag all the way to the back, and maybe also let's drag it to the side just in case. Raise it up. So now we can begin to see that we have gone wrong somewhere, and that might just have been the angle of our camera, or how far our camera is from the subject. So what we can now do is we can probably move this to the back a little bit more, just so that we can have this room to see this. Obviously I can't move it that, so something is definitely wrong. So this is why I tell you that blockout is just the best thing you can do, for your scenes, because it's like treatment. It's like planning for your scene before you even worry yourself too much. It's like planning for your scene. What's going to happen is you're going to do minimal planning subsequently. So when you get into production, you're just focusing on the textures and all of that, as opposed to figuring out everything at the same time. So as you can see, something is definitely wrong, and we need to continue iterating this until we find what is wrong. It could be our focal length simply, and that is almost it maybe. But one thing it could also be is it could be if I move this to the back and then scale this a little bit more, come to edit mode, drag this all the way up just so we can see this beam. Should I take this down or up? Let me just come to edit mode, tab, select my face and drag it all the way up. Let me see, is this what we're looking for? To be honest, it doesn't have to be the exact same thing. Yeah, it's a constant iteration to what our final goal is. So like I said, this is just covering 90% of that space we need, or that space we need to cover, and then leaving that 10% till when we're fine-tuning things. So this is just a block out, so don't think about it too much. Just make sure your camera and everything is fine. So what we're going to do is Shift D and then left click and drag this as our roof here. Then we're going to also do, because now the origin of our cube is all the way to the side, because in edit mode we moved moved part of the geometry itself and not the entire geometry, so our distance is a little bit skewed. What I can do is right click, go to set origin, and then set origin to center of mass, then shift D, come all the way to left click and come all the way to move my subject all the way to here. You can decide to do that, or I don't know if you get into the mirror modifier now, but let me just quickly explain what the mirror modifier does. So there's a modifier in Blender called the mirror modifier. So what the mirror modifier in Blender allows you to automatically create a symmetrical copy of your mesh across a specified axis. This is especially used for modeling and all of that. It is very essential, and it's mirrors based on your origin, right? So if I apply the mirror modifier now, you'd see that nothing is going to happen, and it's because it was generated. It should be in generate and mirror, and it's mostly because our origin is still at the center of our geometry. So essentially it's mirroring inside our geometry. But if we want to, let's say this is the center of our scene, right? I want to make that the center of our scene. If I come to my cube here, right click, set origin to 3D cursor, you see that something just happened, and basically that's our cube being mirrored on this axis. But we want our cube to mirror on the y-axis, and you begin to see that we have an exact duplicate of our model all the way here. And what that means is we have like I said, we have precise data, we have precise duplication. So we didn't really need to do it that way. We could eyeball it, but I just wanted to show you the mirror modifier. It's quite fun. I use it a lot, and yeah, let's move on to other things. So I'm just going to bring my roof a little bit more down. Let me see, maybe. And the beautiful thing about the mirror modifier is whatever I do to this geometry, it's going to, since it's still the same geometry, it's just mirroring it, it's still going to apply to the other side of my geometry. So it's absolutely got sense. I use it a lot, like I said. I'm just thinking of a way we can blend these two. We can blend these two together more. So this is just a block out. Eventually, we might end up indoctrinating this kind. In fact, I think I really like this alterish thing. So we might end up making an alterish thing for our cube, and then yeah, making an alterish thing for our cube. But for now, let's just do a basic block out of what our scene will be. So now let me do the beams. Now remember, this is a block out. We're going to adjust it later on. It might not be, it's far, I guarantee you it's not going to end up exactly like this. So let's do our beams, basically these pillar things. And how we can simply do that is, remember, I'm going to be teaching you a lot of modifiers, how to use a lot of modifiers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my scene, I'm going to shift A, and then I'm going to go to cube, and then I'm going to drag this all the way to the left, and we're going to put our first beam in the scene. So something like this maybe. So I'm going to put it all the way up, so you can see that something feels a little bit off. I'm going to just scale this more and then drag this up. You can feel that something is a bit off. One thing I can do is I'm going to scale this down a little bit more, but it's scaling in our distance. So what I can do, I can go to edit mode, and then I can do S and then scale it in edit mode as opposed to object mode, because you can see in object mode it was making it a little bit more, it was scaling it to the origin, and we don't want that. So I'm going to go to edit mode again, tab, come to this face, and then drag it all the way to the back. That's something we like. I'm going to come to edit mode again and A, and then drag to the middle a little bit, and we're most likely going to change all of this. We just want to do a rough block out of our scene. I'm going to drag this up. So now that we have our first pillar, what we can do is we can do Shift D and duplicate this, but like I said, there's a better way for everything in Blender. So what we can do is we can just delete this. Is there any other duplicates? No. What we can do is we can duplicate our mesh on a certain axis, right? We can array it. That's what the array modifier is called. That's what the array modifier is used for. So the array modifier just creates multiple copies of a mesh in a specified pattern, or arrange it in a grid-like form. Let me just quickly add it. Generate array. You begin to see that we have a duplicate of our what do you call it, of our pillar. It's not like the mirror. The mirror mirrors the same geometry on the other side. The array distributes the geometry on a certain axis, so it's not the same thing. Just keep that in mind. So you can see that even though our distance is, we have a cube, it's literally stuck to our main pillar. So what we can do is we can come to the factor X and adjust this until we find referencing the gaps we have between our pillars here, until we find the sweet spot, and I think something like this. And then the beautiful thing is, once you set the first parameters for the distance between your first two objects, you can just array it and duplicate it along the axis, and it's going to retain the same, what do you call it, the same distance. It's going to offset it along that distance. So that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing about the array. I'm going to move this a little bit in more, and I'm going to Shift D this. We can Shift D this and just move it to the side here and eyeball it, or you can mirror it. I don't know if you want us to mirror it. Okay, let's go ahead and mirror it. So that let's just do a very non-destructive workflow. I'm just going to go to set origin to center of, okay, not center of mouse, set origin to 3D cursor, add modifier, mirror, and then deselect X, come to Y, and we have our mirror. Yep, mirror modifiers are absolutely beautiful, and once you learn how to use them and learn how to utilize them, your life is going to be easier. And yeah, basically we have a rough block out of our scene. We're going to constantly iterate this until we find something we like. Now also remember that we're not using a human. The reason why I want us to have a human here is because of scale, right? You can see that this is big. This looks a little bit too big for our scene, so we're going to constantly iterate this more and more. Maybe if I just select this, come to edit mode, and then just scale it down a little bit more. Bring it down. Let me see something just to make it a little bit more believable. What we can now also do is you can just Shift A and add our cube and scale it to make it the center. You can increase the size, maybe move it front a little bit, and just give it a really cool, something like this. That is wonderful. You can see that our image is gradually coming to life, right? But yeah, also I'm going to make sure I save this file, save as. I'm just going to save it I'm going to create a new folder. And then I'm going to name this save as. So yeah, we've done the first pass of our layouts. See you in the next video. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed yourself, and hope you had fun doing the first pass of your render. In the next video, what we're going to be looking at is your camera animation, and I like us to have that at the very beginning of our project so that we know what we are editing to. But yeah, also remember that we're still going to be iterating, still going to be making corrections, because your eyes only get things only get revealed the more you look at it over and over and over again. So just remember that you're always going to make iterations.